The moment Eliza's champagne glass shattered on the marble floor was when I knew everything had changed. Her perfectly made-up face contorted in shock as she stared at Rebecca and me, her mouth hanging open like she'd seen a ghost. Just seconds earlier, she'd been mocking my second-hand suit and pathetic lifestyle choices. Now, as my boss's lips left mine and the whispers rippled through the charity gala, I watched years of Eliza's condescension dissolve into stunned silence. Rebecca. My brilliant, kind boss, who apparently owned half the company rather than just managing our department as I'd thought, slipped her hand into mine and squeezed. "Sorry I'm late, love," she said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Traffic was awful. Did I miss anything important?" If you're enjoying this story of sweet karma and unexpected twists, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Your support means everything, and I promise there are many more emotional roller coaster stories coming your way. Now, let's dive deeper into how I went from rock bottom to this life-changing moment. 8 months earlier, my life had fallen apart completely. I still remember the sound of Eliza's expensive luggage being dragged down our hallway at 2 a.m., our 4-year-old daughter Lily sleeping peacefully, unaware that her mother had decided family life wasn't stimulating enough. I'd found the text messages from her coworker earlier that evening, 3 months of lies unraveling in a series of intimate exchanges. When confronted, Eliza didn't even deny it. "I've outgrown this," she'd said, gesturing around our modest apartment. "I'm suffocating here, Mark. You're content with mediocrity, this average job, this average life. I want more." The divorce was quick but messy. Eliza had always been the higher earner in our relationship, working at a prestigious marketing firm while I had chosen a more flexible position at a small publishing company to be more available for Lily. When she left, the financial burden fell entirely on me. Child support payments were inconsistent at best, and Eliza seemed more interested in her new life with Executive Xavier than maintaining a relationship with our daughter. Those first months were a blur of sleepless nights, tight budgets, and learning to do everything alone. I mastered the art of French braiding Lily's hair before school, memorized the recipes for her favorite meals, and became both mother and father while working full-time. We moved to a smaller apartment in a less desirable neighborhood to save money. I sold my car and took public transportation. Every decision revolved around making ends meet while giving Lily stability and love. My co-workers were sympathetic but distant, except for Rebecca. As my direct supervisor at Callaway Publishing, she noticed when my performance slipped and called me into her office one afternoon. I'd expected a reprimand. Instead, she closed the door and offered me coffee. "You look exhausted, Mark," she said simply. "What's happening?" Something about her direct but kind approach broke through my carefully constructed walls. Before I knew it, I was telling her everything. The divorce, the financial struggles, my fears of failing Lily. Rebecca listened without interruption, her intelligent eyes never leaving my face. "I'm sorry about your personal situation," she said when I finished. "But I've always valued your work, and I'd like to help make things manageable. Would you consider a more flexible schedule? You could work remotely 3 days a week to eliminate your commute time." I was stunned by her offer. "Won't that cause problems with the other staff?" Rebecca smiled, a quick, decisive expression that I would come to know well. "Let me worry about that. You focus on your daughter and getting back on your feet." That conversation marked the beginning of a professional relationship that gradually evolved into friendship. Rebecca was surprisingly private about her personal life, but extraordinarily generous with her time and advice. She was in her late 30s, unmarried, and completely dedicated to her work. At least, that's what everyone at the office believed. She drove a modest car, wore simple but elegant clothes, and never flaunted wealth or status. What she did possess was an uncanny business sense and a reputation for identifying promising projects that others overlooked. Meanwhile, Eliza had begun a habit of, coincidentally, appearing at Lily's school events with Xavier in tow, dressed impeccably, and making sure everyone noticed her designer wardrobe and his expensive watch. She'd greet me with artificial sweetness while her eyes catalogued my worn shoes and budget haircut. The first time she spotted the patched elbow on my jacket, she'd laughed openly. "Oh Mark," she'd said with exaggerated concern. "Are things that tight? Perhaps you should consider a career change. Xavier's company is always looking for, well, maybe not with your qualifications." These encounters left me seething with humiliation that I'd hide until Lily was asleep, when I'd finally allow myself to feel the full weight of my anger and inadequacy. During one particularly low moment after Eliza had commented on Lily's second-hand birthday dress, I texted Rebecca to apologize for missing a deadline. Instead of responding with a message, she called immediately. "What's really going on?" she asked, cutting through my excuses. I found myself confessing the latest encounter with Eliza. Rebecca listened, then said something I'll never forget: "People who need to diminish others are revealing their own insecurities, not your worth. Your value isn't in your bank account, Mark, it's in who you are and how you love your daughter." Those words became my mantra during difficult moments. Rebecca and I began speaking outside of work hours, discussing books, sharing parenting stories. She had a niece Lily's age, and gradually developing a closeness I hadn't expected. I noticed how she always insisted on meeting at modest cafes rather than expensive restaurants, how she never made me feel lesser when she picked up the check, explaining it as a business expense. One evening, after I mentioned another cancelled ballet lesson for Lily due to tight finances, Rebecca offered a solution disguised as a request. "We need someone to review children's book manuscripts on weekends," she said casually. "The pay is decent, and you could bring Lily to the office while you work. There's a small library corner she might enjoy. Would you be interested?" I recognized the kindness behind her offer, but accepted gratefully. The extra income meant Lily could continue her beloved ballet classes, and working weekends when Lily wasn't in school solved my childcare dilemma. What I didn't anticipate was how those quiet Saturday mornings would transform our relationship. Rebecca would often be there, claiming to catch up on work, bringing pastries and coffee. Lily adored her, especially when Rebecca revealed her hidden talent for storytelling, creating wild adventures featuring a brave little girl who looked suspiciously like my daughter. I found myself watching them together, a strange warmth spreading through my chest that I hadn't felt since before my marriage collapsed. 3 months into this arrangement, I arrived at the office to find Lily's ballet tuition bill on my desk, paid in full for the entire year with a note, "Performance bonus. Well deserved. R." When I confronted Rebecca, insisting it was too much, she shook her head firmly. "Your manuscript selections have increased our junior reader sales by 12%. This isn't charity, Mark. It's business." I didn't entirely believe her, but the pride in her eyes when she mentioned my work made it impossible to refuse. That evening, as I watched Lily practice her pirouettes in our tiny living room, I realized I was smiling more than I had in months. The shift in our relationship happened so gradually I almost missed it. Rebecca began asking my opinion on manuscripts outside my department. We started having lunch together most days. She shared rare glimpses into her past. Growing up with a single mother, working multiple jobs to put herself through college, building her career from nothing. I found myself looking forward to seeing her each day, catching myself watching the way she tucked her hair behind her ear when concentrating or how her eyes crinkled when she really laughed. I was falling for my boss, and the realization terrified me. Then came the annual Callaway Publishing Charity Gala. A prestigious event where authors, publishers, and major donors gathered to support literacy programs. As a mid-level editor, I wouldn't normally attend, but Rebecca insisted I'd made significant contributions to the children's division and deserved recognition. "It's important for your career," she argued. "Besides, I need an ally there. These events are tedious without good company. The real challenge was my wardrobe. I didn't own anything remotely suitable for such an upscale event. When I admitted this to Rebecca, she simply nodded. The company keeps a tailor on retainer for author events. I'll send him your way, consider it part of your job requirements. Before I could protest, she added, the alternative is expense reports and receipts, which would take hours of paperwork. This is simpler. 2 days later, a distinguished older gentleman arrived at my apartment with measuring tape and fabric samples. The charcoal suit he created fit perfectly, making me look like someone who belonged in the world I'd be entering for one night. The evening of the gala arrived, and I arranged for my neighbor Mrs. Patel to watch Lily. I felt strangely nervous, adjusting my tie repeatedly in the mirror. Lily giggled from my bed where she was reading. "You look handsome, Daddy," she said. "Like a prince in my books." I kissed her forehead. "Then you must be my princess. I won't be too late." "Is Miss Rebecca going to be there?" Lily asked innocently. "She makes you smile different. Children see everything." I promised to tell Rebecca hello from her and headed out, taking the subway to the historic hotel downtown where the event was being held. I felt like an imposter walking into that grand ballroom, surrounded by wealth and influence I couldn't comprehend. Rebecca had texted that she'd be arriving late due to a meeting with major donors, so I found myself alone at the edge of the crowd, nursing a single glass of complimentary champagne. That's when I saw them, Eliza and Xavier, gliding through the room like they owned it. My stomach dropped. Eliza worked for a marketing firm that occasionally partnered with publishers, but I never imagined she'd be at this specific event. She looked stunning in an emerald dress that probably cost more than my monthly rent, diamonds glittering at her throat and wrists. I tried to become invisible, but in a cruel twist of fate, she spotted me while getting another drink. Her eyes widened in surprise before narrowing with calculating interest. She whispered something to Xavier, and they both approached, wearing identical expressions of curious disdain. "Mark." "What a surprise," Eliza said, her voice carrying just enough to draw attention from nearby guests. "I didn't expect to see you at an event like this." I forced a polite smile. "I work for Callaway. I'm representing our children's division tonight." Xavier's eyebrow raised slightly. "Ah yes, picture books. Fascinating career choice. How is Lily?" Eliza asked, though she hadn't called our daughter in 3 weeks. "Still enjoying those public school art classes?" "She's wonderful," I replied stiffly. "Top of her ballet class." "Ballet?" Eliza laughed, the sound like glass breaking. "I'm surprised you can afford those lessons. Didn't you have to move to that dreadful little apartment near the train tracks?" My face burned as I noticed others listening. "We're doing fine." "Of course you are," she said with mock sympathy. "Though that suit is quite nice, borrowed from the company closet, I assume?" "Xavier just bought a summer home in the Hamptons." "Perhaps someday you could bring Lily to visit, if you can get the time off." Each word was precisely calculated to humiliate. I stood there, fury and shame battling inside me, when a familiar voice called my name. I turned to see Rebecca walking toward us. Looking absolutely breathtaking in a simple black dress that somehow outshone every other woman in the room. But something was different. Her usual understated elegance had been replaced by an unmistakable aura of authority. The crowd parted for her automatically, several prominent publishers nodding respectfully as she passed. "Mark, I'm so sorry I'm late," she said warmly, reaching my side. She looked at Eliza and Xavier with polite curiosity. "I don't believe we've met." I made awkward introductions, watching confusion cross Eliza's face as she tried to place Rebecca. "Rebecca Henderson?" Xavier repeated, his expression changing dramatically. "Of Henderson Media Group?" Rebecca smiled slightly. "Among other things." Eliza's eyes darted between them. "Henderson as in Henderson Tower downtown?" My family does own some real estate, Rebecca acknowledged casually. Mark, have you had a chance to tell anyone about the remarkable work you've been doing with our literacy initiative? The board was quite impressed with your presentation last week. I stood speechless, wondering what presentation she was talking about when Eliza jumped in. Mark never mentioned he works directly with someone of your position, she said, her voice honey-sweet but eyes calculating. He's always been so modest about his career. That's what makes him exceptional, Rebecca replied, placing her hand lightly on my arm. Substance over self-promotion. It's why I've been trying to convince him to accept the director position for our new children's imprint. This was news to me, but I managed not to show my surprise. Eliza's smile tightened. Director? How unexpected. Mark was always more comfortable following than leading in our marriage. Perhaps he simply needed the right person to follow, Rebecca said pleasantly, though her eyes had hardened. Someone who recognized his worth. The tension was palpable. Xavier, sensing the shift, tugged gently at Eliza's elbow. We should greet the Harringtons before dinner. Of course, Eliza said, but couldn't resist one parting shot. It was illuminating seeing you, Mark. I'm glad you found someone willing to invest in you. The implication was clear. That I was using Rebecca, perhaps sleeping my way into opportunity. It was the final straw, the culmination of months of belittlement and dismissal. Before I could respond, Rebecca stepped slightly forward, her expression calm but determined. Actually, it's quite the opposite, she said. Then she turned to me, her eyes asking a silent question that somehow I understood perfectly. I gave an almost imperceptible nod. What happened next seemed to unfold in slow motion. Rebecca leaned forward and kissed me, not a polite peck, but a real kiss filled with genuine feeling. I heard Eliza's glass shatter as it hit the floor. When Rebecca pulled away, her smile was real and just for me, though her next words were clearly meant for everyone listening. Sorry I'm late, love, she said. Traffic was awful. Did I miss anything important? The silence that followed was delicious. Eliza stood frozen, champagne pooling around her designer shoes, while Xavier looked between Rebecca and me with newfound respect and curiosity. Nothing important, I replied, finding my voice and my courage. Just catching up with old friends. Rebecca slipped her hand into mine. Wonderful. Shall we find our table? I believe we're seated with the board tonight. As we walked away, I heard the buzz of conversation explode behind us. Rebecca led me to a quiet alcove away from curious eyes. I'm sorry if I overstepped, she said immediately. She was being deliberately cruel, and thank you, I interrupted, still processing what had happened. But I'm confused. Henderson Media Group? Director position? Rebecca sighed, looking unexpectedly vulnerable. I should have told you sooner. I don't just manage the children's department. My family owns Callaway Publishing, along with several other media companies. I prefer working directly with the creative teams rather than announcing my position. The pieces suddenly fell into place, her business insights, the ease with which she'd arranged my flexible schedule, the tailor, her confidence among the executive crowd. Why didn't you tell me? I asked. At first, it didn't seem relevant. Then, as we became friends, I enjoyed being valued for my actual work rather than my family name. She hesitated. And recently, I worried it would change things between us in ways I didn't want. Like what? I asked, my heart pounding. Like you might think I was offering opportunities because of my position rather than your talent. Or that our connection might seem inappropriate given the actual power dynamic. She met my eyes directly. The director position is real, by the way. I was going to discuss it with you next week. I struggled to process everything. So that kiss. A flush colored her cheeks. That was, not entirely for show. Though I would understand if I didn't let her finish. This time, I was the one who leaned forward, gently placing my hands on her shoulders and kissing her with all the emotion that had been building for months. When we broke apart, her expression of surprise gave way to a radiant smile. "I take it you're not upset about the secret billionaire thing?" she asked. "I'm a little stunned," I admitted. "But no, not upset. Though I think we need to have a longer conversation about transparency." "Agreed," she said, squeezing my hand. "Starting tonight. But first, are you ready to make a truly spectacular entrance into the main ballroom? Your ex-wife appears to be telling everyone who will listen that there must be some mistake." I laughed, feeling lighter than I had in years. "Let's give them something to talk about." The rest of the evening passed in a blur of introductions, meaningful glances, and Rebecca's hand finding mine under the table. I watched Eliza's attempts to regain social footing fail as person after person came to greet Rebecca, and by extension, me, with deference and interest. By the time dinner ended, Eliza and Xavier had made an early exit, citing a headache. When I finally returned home that night, Mrs. Patel gave me a knowing look. "You have stars in your eyes, Mr. Mark. Good for you. It's been too long." I checked on sleeping Lily, gently brushing hair from her peaceful face, before sitting on the edge of my bed and trying to comprehend how much had changed in a single evening. My phone buzzed with a text from Rebecca, "Thank you for tonight. For the record, I started falling for you when you spent an hour helping the intern fix the copy machine instead of just sending your work to the backup. Your kindness, not your kiss, is what I find irresistible. Breakfast tomorrow? I know a place Lily might enjoy." The following months brought changes both profound and subtle. Rebecca and I agreed to move slowly, careful to separate our professional and personal relationships. The director position was officially offered through proper channels, complete with interviews with the board where I presented ideas I'd been developing for months. When I was hired, no one could legitimately claim favoritism. Eliza's attitude underwent a remarkable transformation. Gone were the condescending comments and accidental encounters. Instead, she began calling Lily regularly and even suggested a more equitable financial arrangement. I suspected her newfound maternal interest had more to do with the connections she thought Lily might now have access to, but I welcomed any positive attention for my daughter's sake. 6 months after the gala, Rebecca and I were having dinner at her surprisingly modest home when she brought up something unexpected. "I've been thinking about Lily's school situation," she said carefully. "The public school is fine, but with your new position, you might consider the options that are now within reach." I stiffened slightly. "I don't want her growing up entitled or thinking money solves everything." "Of course not," Rebecca agreed. "But educational opportunity isn't the same as entitlement. My mother scrubbed floors so I could attend a school with a good science program. It wasn't about status. It was about access." Her perspective made me reconsider my reflexive resistance. "I'll think about it. But I don't want special treatment because of who you are." "What about special treatment because of who you are?" she countered. "A talented director who's earned his position and can provide his daughter with opportunities?" I had no answer for that. Our relationship deepened gradually. Rebecca became a regular presence at our apartment, helping Lily with science projects and introducing her to classic books I'd never encountered. For my part, I discovered Rebecca's carefully hidden sweet tooth and the fact that despite her wealth, she didn't know how to cook even the simplest meals. We complemented each other in unexpected ways. 1 year after the gala, we attended again, this time, openly as a couple. I wore another tailored suit, but this one I'd purchased myself. As we circulated through the crowd, I spotted Eliza across the room. Our eyes met briefly, and to my surprise, she gave a small, almost respectful nod before turning away. "Everything okay?" Rebecca asked, following my gaze. "Yes," I said, realizing it was truly true. I think I've finally let go of something I didn't know I was still carrying. Later that night, after the event, Rebecca came back to my apartment. Once Lily was asleep, we sat on my small balcony, looking at the limited view of city lights. "I have something to ask you," Rebecca said, uncharacteristically nervous. "It's about the future. Our future." My heart raced as she reached into her clutch and pulled out not a ring box, as I'd half expected, but a key. "I found a house," she said simply. "It has a garden for Lily and a home office for each of us. It's in a good school district but not ostentatious. I'd like us to consider living there. Together." She hurried on before I could respond. "I know it's a big step, and I want to be clear, this isn't about me providing for you. It would be ours, in both our names." I looked at the key, then at this remarkable woman who had entered my life when I was at my lowest and never once made me feel less than her equal, despite the vast differences in our circumstances. "Are you proposing cohabitation, Miss Henderson?" I asked with a smile. "For now," she replied, her eyes serious. "But I have other proposals in mind for the future, if you're amenable." I closed my hand around the key and leaned forward to kiss her. "I'm very amenable. 2 years have now passed since that first gala. Lily is thriving in her new school, excelling in both ballet and the science club Rebecca helped establish. I've published my first children's book under a pseudonym. Rebecca insisted it be judged on its merits, not my position. And it's doing surprisingly well. We live in the house with the garden, where Lily has planted sunflowers that tower above her head. As for Eliza, we've reached a kind of peace. She's still with Xavier, though rumors suggest their relationship has challenges. She sees Lily regularly and has become, if not warm, at least consistent. The last time she dropped Lily off, she actually thanked me. For what? I asked, genuinely confused. For not turning her against me, she said simply. You had every right to, but you didn't. That says something about you that I missed when we were together. It wasn't an apology, but it was something like respect, which, in the end, was all I'd really wanted. Sometimes at night, with Rebecca sleeping beside me and Lily safe down the hall, I marvel at how completely my life has transformed. Not because I found a secret billionaire, though Rebecca cringes at that term. But because when I was at my lowest, I learned my own worth from someone who saw value where others, including myself, saw only struggle. The true turning point wasn't that public kiss or the humiliation of my ex, satisfying though that moment was. It was the day I stopped measuring my value as a father, as a man, by the size of my bank account or the approval of someone who had chosen to leave. It was the day I recognized that real strength isn't found in status or revenge, but in the dignity of caring for those who depend on you, no matter the circumstances. And that, more than any kiss or comeback, is what truly destroyed the power of pride and judgment forever.